Hello, Gene Schwimmer here, and welcome to me. Today I want to talk about taxes. Of course I'm going to talk about the tax bill that the president just signed into law right before Christmas, but also a general comment about taxes, really about liberals, Democrats, their attitude toward taxes, important lesson that I learned that I want to pass along, and then maybe if I have time, I'll get into some other general theory that I think is going to affect the election going forward, the next election. Anyways, so taxes, it's very interesting, the disaster that the Democrats had been predicting over the passage of the tax bill, that it would not help the economy at all, would just benefit these greedy corporations. The average person would not get any tax cut. Well, that latter assertion, it's already been blown out of the water. You've had the Tax Foundation, you have the Tax Policy Center, and you have the Joint Committee on Taxation. The first two, one of those is a right-leaning economic think tank. The other one is a left-leaning economic think tank. And then you have the Joint Committee, which is Congress, which is, it's nonpartisan. They all predict that just about everybody gets a tax cut. Oh, and then the corporate tax cut, before I forget, the idea that it would not make us more competitive or would not grow the economy, that's been blown way out of the water. If you look at, unfortunately, I'm so busy these days, I don't have time I used to put up articles and things, but if you Google it, you'll find very easily that a number of other countries are already preparing to lower their corporate tax rates to keep up with us having lowered ours. Now, why would they have to do that? Why would they even want to do that because it means presumably fewer taxes, but I don't agree with that. I think they'll get more economic growth, and they'll ultimately come out ahead. But the whole point is, if there was going to be no effect, if it wasn't going to hurt these other countries for us to lower the corporate tax rate, why are they suddenly jumping on the train to lower theirs? So let's see what happens. The possible disadvantage is that if they do that, we could possibly lose, we the United States, the relative advantage that we just gained by lowering our rates with the other countries having not lowered theirs. So now if the difference becomes similar again, we might not get quite the competitive advantage that we were expecting, but we're still going to get a much better economy, and you're going to get more jobs and more growth and higher incomes. In fact, if you've been following again the news, you must have heard that a number of companies already are giving out $1,000 bonuses because now they're going to have the money to do that. And besides doing that, a couple companies have raised their both banks, I guess banks pay the lower level people not very much, because they're raising their minimum wage to $15, which I thought that was what Democrats were fighting for, and they were trying to do it legislatively by just having the city councils and state legislatures just mandating a $15 minimum wage, whether the businesses, the employers could afford it or not. But now, just by lowering the tax rate and these companies now having all of this extra money, not only from the lower rates, but being able now to repatriate money that they have parked overseas in other countries, now that it won't be taxed, or it would be taxed at a low rate, I'm sorry, I think 10%, 15% overseas money brought into the country. I recall reading that Apple is going to bring 250 billion, that's billion with a B, into the country that was sitting outside the country. I can't imagine that's not going to create jobs and new technology and new inventions and so on and so forth. I guess I'm going to make a general point now that based on that, because remember Obamacare, we were all promised two major things. Number one, if we liked our doctor or if we liked our insurance company, we could keep them both. And that the cost curve, that was a phrase they kept using over and over, would be bent down, that the average family would see a reduction of $2,500 a year in their health insurance premiums. Well, neither of those are true. That's been blown out of the water too. In fact, if you go on to the American Thinker, AmericanThinker.com website. I used to write for them, and if you go through my archive of articles, you'll find I actually put up the letter that I got from my insurance company canceling my insurance right after Obamacare passed. And I was shocked, needless to say, that I got it, because I was promised that would not happen. And now they made these other predictions regarding the purported harm of changing the tax code, lowering the rates and simplifying the tax code, though not as much as I would have liked them to do it. And I'm waiting to see, if we want to be fair on both sides, whether people really will be able to do their taxes on a postcard in 2019 when they do their 2018 taxes. I'm looking forward to seeing how that works out, but the point I'm making is that we already see they were wrong about Obamacare, they're wrong about this, and I wonder if people are predicting that the Republicans will lose a lot of seats, maybe even lose the House in 2018. But I wonder if you see this benefit, and if the second time where a positive promise made by the Democrats about health care was proven wrong, and negative prognosis for these tax cuts, if that's proven wrong, that's twice that they've been in a short time where they've been found wrong on major issues, and maybe no one will trust them anymore. Anyways, that's something, if I were running a campaign, if I were head of the Republican National Committee, that is a point I would push. And that brings me now to the main point that I wanted to make. I guess I have to confess here that I used to be a Democrat. I voted for Jimmy Carter. Please forgive me if you're a conservative, but I thought I was doing the right thing at the time. I mean, I was independent. I won't say Democrat, because I had voted for both parties. I voted for Nixon, and then I was, way too young to vote, but I liked Kennedy, so I was independent. But I became a solid Republican after Ronald Reagan. What did it for me, the reason was that because he put his policies into practice, he lowered taxes, and we had, if you're too young to have lived through it, you have no idea how bad it was. The malaise, the just discouragement in the country among people. They just thought that our best days were over, and then you had double-digit inflation. I can't describe what that was like. I won't take time now. But Ronald Reagan, he had to throw the country into a recession, he and Paul Volcker, to bring, we had interest rates, I think they were approaching 20%. I mean, they were way up there. So he had to really crank up the interest rates, and it threw us into a recession. But then the dollar stabilized, the dollar strengthened, and then they were able to lower rates, and the economy, it just took off. I mean, like a rocket. What Reagan also did, he was the president who signed into law the Earned Income Tax Credit. He wasn't philosophically opposed to helping people and letting the government help people, but the point was that costs money, and you have to have the money to do it. And that's the one lesson that I learned from Ronald Reagan, that you have to not try to stifle the economy or go after the producers and the innovators and the so-called wealthy, because you need them to generate income and growth to, number one, provide jobs, but also to pay taxes and provide the revenue to give all these benefits that Democrats want to give. I mean, if you talk about health care, Obamacare is not working, but if we were, say, this is really dreaming, a $50 trillion economy, about 4 times what it is right now, and we had no debt, then a national health care system would be an afterthought. Just like I remember visiting Google as a real estate broker. I had a meeting there, and it's amazing what they provide their employees. Every floor has a kitchen that's open 24 hours a day with a chef, and anything that you want is free. It was just amazing. But they didn't do that in the beginning when they were just a couple of kids working in the two founders, when they were in a college dorm or something. If they would have spent all their money, all their seed money on providing health care, I'm sure they have a great health care plan, and free food for everybody, Google would never have gotten off the ground. And that's the same way with a country, that you have to grow, you have to wait, you have to maybe grow the economy, have low taxes, and maybe we could have a national healthcare system 10 years from now, 20 years from now. I mean, that's how it used to be. My grandparents came from Russia. My father came from, well, Czechoslovakia. Now it's divided. It's Czech Republic and Slovakia now, but it was Czechoslovakia. And he never had hopes of becoming a real estate broker like me or a lawyer like my brother. He had a little fruit market, but he worked for the hope that he had for his children to have a better life. And that's what you have to do as a country. You have to build a foundation, and you have to work for your descendants to have a better life, not take all the money that the government takes in and spend it now to give a benefit for you, that instead of providing something for a future generation, that a future generation is going to have to pay off because of the debt we've put them in to give ourselves an easier life today. That's my point. If Democrats would get off their antagonism towards the wealthy and stop using this stupid class warfare argument and just support low taxes and low regulations, and then fight to use all the money that would be generated to help other people. That's a perfect compromise between Republicans and Democrats. And that's what I saw in Reagan, that he actually did that. And what really turned me to the Republican Party, and then I'm not in any party, I'm just a conservative, was that as soon as his term ended, his second term, the Democrats, they just went back to what they were doing before, trashing the rich and forcing George Bush Sr. to raise taxes. They learned nothing, and that taught me, they would rather attack rich people than help poor people. That was lesson one. And then the second lesson that I learned, which is on the same theme, same idea, was the story is told of Tom Foley, the former Speaker of the House, a Democrat, and Speaker of the House, and the Republicans were proposing tax cuts, and Democrats wanted to argue against them, and they had to come up with an argument. And the argument that one aide brought to him, an aide came to him and said, well, this is what we'll do. We did the calculations. We found out that if these tax cuts pass, the Republican tax plan at that time, that the wealthy will get, I don't know, the average wealthy person will get extra $10,000 or whatever, or they'll get all this, however much money, and the average person only gets $10. That was our argument. They would only get $10. And Tom Foley said, oh, no, you can't do that. You can't make that argument. And they said, well, why not? I mean, the rich get all this money, and it's just keeping their own money. I mean, it's not money that's given to them. And the average person keeps only $10 of their money. Why isn't that a strong argument? And Tom Foley says, well, if you say that, then the average person is going to say, where's my $10? In other words, they want the money. And that's the liberal Democrat mindset, to me, is they always worry about, in any tax plan, how do the wealthy do? Not how much can we help the poor person. If the poor person gets $10, okay, but they worry about how much more the rich person gets. And if you're an average guy, you're supposed to feel, well, I'm not getting my $10, but I can sleep and be happy, and I can buy less. But that's okay, because I know that a rich person isn't keeping more of their money, which they're just keeping. They're not. It's not like the poor person is paying taxes that are being transferred to the rich person, more like the other way around. And it really bothers me, because it was not too long ago. I was in real estate 20 years ago. I got out of it, and I was doing word processing, believe it or not. I was mostly as a temp for years and years, so that I could write, because I wanted to write and play music. And then the reason I got back into real estate was because suddenly there was a recession a few years ago, and all the work dried up. I had no work, and unfortunately, the one kind of discrimination that you can still practice today is against older people. In fact, I just read another article about it. But once I passed 50 years old, it just got harder and harder to find work. I mean, I could work at places where I had been working, but I wasn't getting any new work. And when the old work dried up, so that's how I got back in real estate. And the only point I'm making about that is $10 would have meant a lot to me at that time. And it does now. I mean, I never forget. I work because I don't want and don't have time to make these videos because I don't want to be poor like that again. I remember I would spend all my days in Barnes & Noble bookstore or a Starbucks because I could buy one cup of, I didn't want to just sit around my apartment. I could buy, or there's a coffee house I used to like to go to on 86th Street. They're not there anymore. And buy one cup of coffee because I could sit somewhere with people around me and I could sit there all day with my one cup of coffee, and that's all I could afford. I remember walking by Dunkin' Donuts, and it's ironic now because they're a customer of mine. The people I work with, we work with a Dunkin' Donuts franchise. In fact, we just did a deal with them. But at that time, I would walk by, I would see people buying a $1 donut, and I would be so jealous because I couldn't go in there. I couldn't buy a $1 donut, and it is a real insult to me when Democrats say that, well, it's only $10. It's not only $10 when you don't have $10. Just trust me. Like, I hope you just have to trust me on this, that you never find out for yourself. But that's my problem with Democrats, and I hope they will change and think about helping poor people and not worrying so much about rich people and not weaponizing success, I guess you would call it, and using rich people to make poor people not to say, where's my $10? Because, like I said, $10 means a lot. And that's it. I guess I talked enough today. I'm going to sign off. Hello to all my subscribers again. Maybe I'll get another one. And, well, I could, if you share this video, do the thumbs up thing under there. Thumbs up. And I guess it's just always like this. It's hard to say goodbye. So I'll just say fare thee well. So, fare thee well. And, well, bye.
You got plan, darling?
I always got plan. They don't ever work, but I always got one.